Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Empowerment Project podcast by Andrea Bosco and Dr. Shar Ray. We are so excited to be with you again today and share our second episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our first episode on affirmations. We had such great responses from everyone, and it just means so much to us. So we're very motivated to get more information out to you all. So please make sure that you're following us on Spotify. So if you click that follow button at the top, that will make sure you get information and notifications on all of our upcoming episodes so you can continue to follow along. So anyway, we've had a fun week, a busy week, and it really helped us to formulate the topic for today. So, Shar, I'll let you kind of start off.
Well, I don't know where to begin. I mean, it's a pile up of stuff that I can talk about, but let's start by just being grateful that we were able to make it to that school yesterday in one piece. I mean, the roads
Hmm.
were horrible. I mean, I can't believe I was white knuckling all the way down the 407, which was crazy, but that was something to be really grateful for. Having an amazing session with these students, that was something to be grateful for. And I mean, yesterday night when I came home, my daughter was in the ER. And again, grateful that it wasn't anything serious. It was definitely something that needed to be checked out, but thank God it was nothing serious. So I think if you're talking about gratitude as our topic for today,
Yes.
I'm feeling immensely grateful for so much in this moment. Um, right. And, something that we talk about, not only with our students, but I know it's a part of our daily practice. And I feel like because we've been really adamant about making this a part of our practice, it's been easier for us to find ourselves even in some very tough, dark moments to be grateful. The way that I'm feeling right
Absolutely.
now, right? We made it home in one piece. My daughter's home from the hospital and is doing better. So, yeah, feeling really
Yeah,
grateful.
absolutely. And just to give some context that depending on where you're listening from, so we're just outside of Toronto and we got like our first big snowfall yesterday. And it's always like chaos, right? Like as soon as like the first snowfall, it's like nobody knows what to do anymore. It's like we haven't lived in Canada our whole lives and don't know how to drive. I'm not saying you didn't know. You did very well. I'm talking about the other people on the roads that were
Thank you, Andrea.
swirling around. No, no, you were very good. And I'm not a good passenger. I'm actually a horrible passenger, asked my husband, but I felt very safe in the car with you. So yes, so we had a snowfall. It was a little bit uh interesting getting to our school, but we made it, and it ended up being such a beautiful session. And I don't know if you can hear in my voice, but I've been sick with a cold all week, and I don't usually get colds, and I don't usually get sick. My whole family has probably been sick like 5 times, and they think I'm this bionic woman because they're like, "Mom, you never catch what we got," and I'm like, "Well, I'm just grateful I don't." But life's been busy, and definitely I've been worn out. So this is sort of my body's way of saying, you need to slow down. So, but I 100% this whole week found myself going back to feeling grateful simply for the opportunity to work from home when I'm not feeling well, to do virtual calls with people instead of in person, to, literally work from my bed with a cup of tea and a box of Kleenex. So, and it just reminded us, and when we were chatting about what we were going to talk about today and how important this principle of gratitude is in our lives. And it's so simple, right? It's like, yeah, we're always saying thank you and we're grateful. We're Canadian, we say thank you a lot, but um, really making it a formal practice in your life has immense benefits. And it is a tool that we use when we speak to all of our students and parents and whoever. It is one of our core principles in terms of mental health and well-being. So I think it's a really important topic to discuss today, and even especially how it impacts your brain, because we love the science. We
Yeah.
love to break it down. I know I feel good when I feel grateful, but why? Like, why am I feeling good? So let's break it down a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that for me is always key, right? Especially when we're talking to these students, right? I mean, they're really smart kids and they want to know why. Like, why should
Mhm.
they engage in these types of activities? Like, what is it doing for them? What is the benefit? And, they might not feel the benefit in the moment, but I think it's the long term practice that really helps them realize that they can change the way that their brain functions. They can change the way that they feel. And they can really take any situation and find that silver lining. And so, one of my favorite things, right, to do with the kids is I want you to think of a challenging situation right now. Can you find the silver lining in this particular situation? And often when we're talking to them, it's like, I'm really stressed with school. Well, okay, can we find a way to be grateful for that? And it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm grateful that I have an education. I'm grateful that I have support while I'm going through this stress from my teachers or my friends or my parents. I mean, they're really able and they're capable of, of flipping that narrative. But it's almost like they it's not like they need permission, but it's like they didn't know that they could do it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I absolutely love doing with the kids. But then, when you really get into the brain science and you start talking to them about the parts of the brain, like the prefrontal cortex, for example, which is the front part of our brain. And when you are expressing gratitude, it helps you process emotions on a much more effective, efficient manner. You're able to make proper judgments. There's more morality associated with gratitude than the interpersonal skills that are able to be built. Like simply saying thank you to a teacher or saying thank you to a friend. A lot of people don't realize it, but when you are in a state of appreciating someone else for something that they're doing, they're more inclined to do more of that for you because you are appreciative. And so, the science and the physiology behind that is, when you are in that state of appreciation and you're bonding and you're connecting with somebody, you're releasing oxytocin, right? So oxytocin
Mhm.
is that bonding hormone. So literally by having that moment of gratitude or appreciation or shaking somebody's hand, you're releasing oxytocin and you're connecting with this person on a deeper level, which is beautiful. And I personally think that through gratitude we develop more empathy, right? We're not
Yeah.
only grateful for the things that are happening in our own life, but we're also appreciative of the experiences other people have that shape them to be who they are. So, there's a lot of like really heavy science around that, which again, I think is really important for these students to know. And then, okay, let's talk about another part of the brain. Like, let's talk about the hypothalamus, right? Because again, this is the pleasure center in the brain.
Mhm.
So, gratitude helps with sleep. Okay, so this is crazy, but literally writing things that you're grateful for before you go to bed releases melatonin, which is a sleep hormone, right?
Yeah.
So, and not only is it good to do gratitude before you go to bed, but what a great way to revisit your day, right? And I
Mhm.
know that you have a really cool practice, which I hope you talk about after I finish.
Yeah.
But what it also does, it's helping you recall the things that happened in the day. So you're really accessing your archives, your memory. It helps regulate body temperature. It helps regulate metabolism, which is my favorite.
We
Anything,
all want to help our metabolism.
anything to help speed up my metabolism. I'm thrilled. So like I'm all about gratitude. But I want you to
Absolutely.
talk about that practice, Andrea, because I think that's really cool what you do.
Yes. So, okay, so before I do that, I want to read a quote from
Okay.
an author. I think it just really sets up almost like why I started that formal practice. So,
Okay.
Melody Beattie is an author. She's a poet and author. She wrote Journey to the Heart, an amazing um kind of daily reflection book. It's laid out in the days, like the dates, like January 1, 2, 3, and you can basically read a new entry every day, and it's so beautiful. So she wrote about gratitude, and I think it's one of the most profound and most beautiful ways she described gratitude. So I'm just going to read her quote. And she says, gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what you have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos to order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend. Nothing around you has to change. Gratitude shifts the moment and shifts you. So, like, just
Yeah,
beautiful, right?
very powerful.
So powerful. And especially that last line, like, nothing around you has to change.
Yeah.
Right? And when we talk about this with students or even with adults in and in around that idea of managing stress, right? Because stress isn't going anywhere. Like it's unfortunately always going to be part of our lives. And we kind of like lay it on them thick, when we're talking to some of these high school students, we're like, it ain't getting any better. It's only going to get worse in a way because the responsibilities get higher, so stress levels get higher. But if we can start to choose to understand that that stress isn't going to change, it's still going to sort of be there. But how are we going to choose to shift into different states of mind so that stress is not as heavy? So that stress maybe doesn't affect our body as long, and we don't dump that cortisol, that stress hormone, constantly into it. Because if we just take, a stressful situation, for example, and we know the body is in fight or flight and we're trying to get through it and we're dumping that cortisol, as soon as we flip into gratitude and all of a sudden we're dumping the opposite hormones, right? Oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and we're starting to sort of pile that on top instead, it quiets it, right? It shifts and it quiets that stress space. And again, nothing else has to change. It's not like the stress has gone away.
Yeah.
It's just that you've shifted. You shifted into a place of gratitude. So, yes, this crappy thing happened, but how can I find the silver lining,
Right. And
right?
remember, there's learning, right? Like when you think about it, there's also lessons attached to those, let's say, negative situations, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the other thing that everyone needs to understand. It's not just students, like you said, it's everyone, anyone that's listening to this podcast, right? That every situation has been curated for you
Yeah.
to find the lesson and the learning behind it, right? And I think once we are able to understand what that lesson is, it's almost like we get to the next level. Right. So let's suppose it is, a student that's getting a bad grade at school, or they did a test and, they didn't do as well as they expected. And I think generally speaking, like even when I think back to it, I can already feel the knots in my belly, right? I can already
Mhm.
feel the knots building up. But, knowing what I know now, it's like, okay, I didn't do as hot as I thought I did. Um, you know, what can I learn from this experience, right? Okay, so I might need to hire a tutor. I might need to go see my teacher after school to get some support with this particular subject. I might need to scale down some of my social activities or fix my schedule so I am studying a little bit more effectively or efficiently. But again, there's gratitude in that too. Like, thank goodness that these lessons are coming in now for me. This was just a quiz. And it's not the exam, for example, right? So I think in every situation, if we are open, there is learning attached to it. And once we learn that lesson, we level up, which I think is really, really huge. So, I think that everyone needs to understand that these lessons are designed to help us level up. Like it's almost like a video game, right? You
Yeah,
hit a certain level, you master a certain level, and then all of a sudden you're up at the next level. And I think that's exactly what these situations are designed to do. I mean, how else do you grow? Like
exactly.
there's no other possible way that you can grow unless you're having experiences that are pushing you out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah,
There's growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone,
exactly. And like we said before, if what you focus on grows,
right?
right? And if you continue to focus on the gratitude in your life and the beauty and the silver lining, that's what the brain is going to keep searching for, right?
Right.
And so when we talk to people about starting a form of gratitude practice in maybe a form of a journal, let's say you have a gratitude journal, we've heard about them all the time. I think the first time actually I heard about a gratitude journal was when Oprah started doing them back probably 20 years ago,
Mhm.
maybe less, but anyway. And so formally writing down on a daily basis, either when you wake up in the morning or whatnot. And so what tends to happen is you'll write like the big things at the beginning. I'm grateful for my health and my family and my job and my house, and it'll be like those, big items, and that'll come quickly for you. Then as you start to do it more often, you can repeat those things, of course, but then you start to find the little things.
Yeah.
And then throughout your day, you're starting to search for those things, right? So, for example, I got a really good parking spot at the mall. I didn't have to walk, 2 kilometers to the front door. I pulled right in and someone was pulling out and I got a good parking spot. Or, my Tim's coffee was like super hot and super good today. Like you start to source out those little mini wins throughout your day. Or, today it snowed yesterday, it was a really cloudy day. Today the sun is shining and it's bright and the snow is glistening on the ground, right? Like you start to see the beauty in these little things and your brain starts to search them out. So I'll tell you what I started to do. Now I've had a gratitude journal practice for a while. I kind of come and go from it because what I did find, what I was sort of like, oh, I'm repeating the same things, and then I fall off the wagon. We all fall off the wagon. And Shar knows I'm not a massive writer. Like,
Mhm.
as much as I love to talk, you would think that I love writing just as much. I don't. Like, pen to paper tends to be more of an effort for me.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely know the benefits, and I see when I do it, I enjoy it. But what I started to do was I simply opened the notes on my phone. Because let's face it, we're always on our phones. And so I started a note and I called it What Went Great Today. And I put the date, like literally month/day. And I wrote one thing that went great that day.
Mhm.
And it could have been like when I open it now, I have some big things in there, like um getting a clear result on my mammogram. Okay, this was big for us, for
Yeah.
me, knowing that I got a clear, I was a clear scan because I had to go back a second time and I was a little nervous about that. So I go from that to um, laughing with my kids, winning a hockey game, putting up the Christmas tree.
Mhm.
So, I go to little things, and what I find is throughout my day now is I'm searching out those opportunities because I know that later I'm going to write them down. So, and then you reflect back and you see, life is quite beautiful when you choose to focus on the beauty versus focusing on, the lack and the challenges, which we know are there, right? We're not trying to, you know, ask people to be riding on, rainbows and unicorns all day. I get that,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? I know we're not, asking that, but can you still search out the good, right? And
Mhm.
beauty? because it really is a shift. It shifts the moment and it shifts who you are. So that practice has been really good for me, and I've enjoyed doing it. And I it's been about like 2 months now, which is big for me.
Yeah, no, and you know that I'm the writer. I love writing
Mhm.
everything, I could write my life story, and I
Yeah.
love writing. But same, I fall often on the wagon of writing gratitude, but I'm finding that I'm saying it so much more. Um, and when I have a moment where I'm feeling very grateful, it's thank you, more please. Thank you, more please. And
Yes.
I actually learned that from a friend of ours from the book club that we were originally a part of. And every time I see my kids laughing or hanging out together, or in them enjoying a meal that I made, and or that we're actually sitting at the table for dinner together, oh my gosh, like I'm like, thank you, more please, thank you, more please, because these are the moments that I want more of. And there's so much appreciation in these tiny things, and these, I mean, actually, you know what, they're not so tiny, they're like magical moments. I find
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
find they're really magical for me. And you're right, our brain is starting to look for those other magical moments, right? The reticular activating system, we talked about that before. And that's that part of the brain that's always searching for the things that you've decided to input in your brain, right?
Yeah.
So if you're being grateful for, having these amazing meal times together, then all of a sudden these other opportunities are created so you can do the same and more
E
often.
exactly. Yeah. And another practice that I used to do with my kids, which is a great, idea, especially for anyone listening that has younger children, um, I think it just resonates more with the younger kids in terms of the actual practice, is I used to have a gratitude jar I mean, it's still there, I'll be honest, it's in my kitchen, it's still there. Um, we don't input the entries anymore, but it is a fixture. It's there. It is subconsciously being, you know, looked at throughout my day. But basically, I just got a jar from the dollar store with a pad of paper, and I would tell my kids every day, write something you're grateful for and put it in the jar. And then when the jar would fill up, we would dump it out and have a day or an afternoon to read them. And I remember at the time my son was quite young. I don't even think he knew how to write yet. And there were a few entries that were written by my daughter, and then she would write from Michael. And so she would
Oh,
write it for him. It was so cute. And then when he did start to learn how to write, he would write his own, like my toys. Like he'd write like really small little sentences. And it was so beautiful to do. Um and it gets them into that practice, right, of finding things you're grateful for. And then I remember during that time, my son was complaining that he wanted another Lego set because, you never have enough Lego. And I remember hearing my daughter saying to him, listen, you should just be grateful for the ones that you have. And I'm sitting there in the other room going, yes, it's sinking in. It's getting there. And then, as they get older, unfortunately, as people, we get a little bit more jaded. It's a little bit harder to tap into those practices, but it is still constantly a conversation in my house
yeah.
around gratitude, around, even if there's judgment, right? Like even if they come home and they're judging somebody else or judging, a situation, I try to bring in that conversation around, okay, well, listen, we don't know where other people are coming from, and that they could be going through something really challenging, and so how can we be grateful? Like let's look at our lives and be so grateful that that's not something you have to deal with right now,
Hmm.
and I get the eye rolls. Trust me, I get the eye rolls. I get the whole, okay, mom, like you're, you know, just lecturing again. But I know it's sinking in and I will never stop. And so that's why it is so important for you parents out there to set the example.
Yeah.
They, our children, and I said this before, they are constantly listening to us. They're listening to our words and our language. So, what kind of words and language are you using around them? And that's what they're picking up on. So is it more complaining? Is it more, just, oh man, I'm having the worst day. I hate my job, this and that. We're so busy. Like, what are the words and language, the energy that we're putting out into our household? Because that's what the kids are going to pick up,
Right.
right? So I try to be that positive space because I know my husband struggles with it, but he's getting better.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if it's a male thing. I don't know what it is, but I know I have heard from many people that the males in their life tend to have a harder time finding that silver lining and kind of finding that positive learning in the moment. But anyway, it's possible.
With my kids, what I used to do when they were younger, and I love the fact that you had that gratitude jar because I remember I had one in my house too. But the two things that I used to do with my kids is we used to play the game Roses and Thorns at dinner. Have you
Oh
ever played that
yes,
before? Where
yes,
they go around and they tell you like all the great things that happened in their day and the things that weren't so great. And, can we find, and we would say, okay, well, can we find the silver lining in that? Was there something that we learned from that situation? And again, it would spark up great dinner conversation. And then the other thing that I used to do when they were even younger is when they couldn't write is I'd get them to draw. Give them a box of crayons and paper, and then they would just draw. Oh mom, this is, I'm grateful for the sun, and would be like a yellow splash on paper, right? Just because that's how they were drawing the sun. But so I mean, the thing is that it's such a, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that this is a practice that can start very young with our kids. And if we want this to become a formal practice for them, it's important to start young. I mean, again, if you haven't had a gratitude practice and you want to start now, there's no time like the present. But
right.
again, things that you can do with younger kids. But then the other thing I was going to say to you, just because I've got a 13-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 21-year-old,
Ooh, 21. Yeah,
they go radio silent for a little while. So, as a parent, I'm like, God, I sound like a broken record. I sound like a broken record. Nobody's listening. And then, that radio silence kicks in. And then all of a sudden, kind of like what you said with Isabella, like all of a sudden, she's like, Michael, you should be grateful for what you have. All of a sudden, I find out that my kids have a gratitude practice or that they're praying at night. And things that I kind of find out like by accident,
yeah,
but it's happening. Like this is the thing. Like it's so, and remember, if you have a teen, the world does revolve around them. Like in
yeah,
their eyes, the world does revolve around them. And they're very demanding and all of that good stuff at that age. But I would say to every parent, please don't give up. You know, it's okay if you get the eye rolls and all of that good stuff, but I promise you, this is building these awesome neural pathways in their brains that they will come around to using once they get out of that sort of teenage phase. And again, like I'm seeing it, right? I've got a 21-year-old who's out of that teenage stage, and then one that's coming into it that's about to go radio silent, and one of them and one of them that's, again, beginning to use it in a sort of secretive, quiet way. But believe me, it's happening. It's happening. So again, that is something that I'm so grateful for.
yeah, for sure. And like just to add on to that, like you just keep at it,
Yeah.
right? Like it's never being wasted. And at the end of the day, it starts with us, right? It starts with
Mhm.
we're never going to change or impact the people around us the way we really want to, like, or the way our thoughts or our ideas are sort of planning on. It's just going to happen as it should.
Mhm.
The only thing we can control is how we act, right?
Right.
And what we say. So focus on yourself, focus
Right.
on your own practices, focus on what you're saying, the words you're using,
Mhm.
the way you're reacting and responding to your children and to your family, other family members, And slowly but surely, you'll start to see the patterns. You'll start to see the influences and the effects that you have on people. You
Mhm.
know, it'd be amazing for us to just be able to wave magic wands and change everybody in our lives, but
Mhm.
it's it needs to happen in so many different ways, right? They're going to hear stuff from you, they're going to hear stuff at school, they're going to hear stuff, at their extracurricular activities and all that, but knowing that coming home is their sort of safe place and that strong foundation is so important.
Yeah.
So focusing on yourself and how you're showing up and setting that amazing example for them is key.
Yeah, leading by example. I mean, that's the easiest and simplest way to put it. Lead by example. And remember, every time you are expressing gratitude or you're deciding to change your language, it's impacting your brain as well as your physiology. And if it's going to affect you and you're starting to notice the benefits of it, guaranteed it's going to affect your kids as well in a positive way, right?
Exactly, exactly.
So I'm
So
thankful for you, Andrea.
I know, and I'm thankful for you, Shar. I honestly, I thank God every day for you and for what we've created. So yeah,
Me too. Me too.
it's amazing. And the I wanted to mention the quote by Deepak Chopra, another great speaker on this topic, and he was a he's a brain surgeon, right? He was a brain surgeon.
A neuroscientist, I think, and
Yeah, but I
yeah,
think he also like operated. He did
yeah,
like
he's
certain.
definitely a medical doctor. You know what? I'm sorry, I don't remember, but I
No,
know
but
he's in the medical field.
yeah, but then he's written tons of books on
Yes.
Eastern philosophies and whatnot. Anyway, his line is gratitude is the gateway to abundance. So when I hear the word gateway, right, I literally envision like big gates sitting there, and as soon as I am grateful, it opens up to this world of abundance,
Mhm.
right? So if we're changing our language and we're putting new words in our mind, maybe that is your next affirmation is gratitude is the gateway to my abundance and my life is abundant.
Mhm.
And when we start to put that out there, it will show up to us. Our brain will say, thanks for coming out. Thanks for giving me that information. Let me help you reaffirm that.
Mhm.
Let me help you reaffirm that. So be grateful, my friends. Be really grateful and see how the world around you and the world inside of you changes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So thank you again for listening to this second episode. Be sure to continue to follow us. We have some really great content coming up and including some great interviews with people. I know you guys like listening to Shar and I talk, but we love to bring in some other people to get their perspectives as well. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day, everyone.